Adam and I had a really nice week last week because we got to celebrate our 20-year anniversary, which was a lot of fun. And we got to go back to where we honeymooned, which was the Whit Sundays, and we got to spend a lot of time together without the children. My amazing mum came and stayed from Sydney, and not only did I leave her with a very detailed schedule of honours rehearsal for the HTG Emma performance, I also threw two puppies in the mix that we'd had for maybe 4 days before we went away. I said, here, Mum, bye, ran off. But she did really well, and everyone survived. There's not too much damage from the puppies in the house, and everyone's happy. So it's really nice to be here this morning in between all the play stuff, and Shayak is also doing like an Oliver with a Twist production that I'm very much involved in, and so to be able to just take some time out this morning and have the real privilege of sharing a bit of my story is amazing. So thank you for having me. All right, so Testimony Day. I always struggled a little bit with testimonies because, well, you'll see why. So I'll set the scene for you. Hobart, Tasmania, okay, July 23rd, 1985. It was the best day of my parents' life, I would like to imagine. I came along and blessed them as their firstborn, as well as a daughter. But you got to rewind a little bit earlier to when my mum came out from Hong Kong. She was 18, didn't speak any English, and went to a University of Tasmania, to get her teaching degree. And at the same time, met my dad, who was also at uni, and he was studying like a double degree in, I think it was like a Bachelor of Maths, and got honours in something in science, and he's a very, very smart computer engineering guy. So you can see where I get it, right? Do not ask me any math questions. There's a reason I work with books. So I had these two parents, they met each other, and I was very, very lucky in that they were both Christian. They became Christians in university. So I came along and grew up in a Christian family, which is pretty incredible considering that, well, one, my dad, my Australian parent, he grew up in Australia but there was no Christian background there at all. And then my mum, being Chinese in Hong Kong, grew up in that very deeply rooted culture and religion of Taoism. So there's idols, and there's food sacrifices, and there's temples full of if you've ever been into a Taoism, like a Taoist temple, or any of really the Asian kind of temples, those idols are terrifying. They're usually really big and really angry. Angry. Their faces are always and so whenever we would go and see my grandparents who did immigrate out this way, and they lived in a Taoist area, I was always so scared going near those temples. It was very scary. So the fact that my mum grew up with that and then found Christ, or really Christ found her, is just an amazing testimony on her behalf. And so for me to then come into that family, grow up in a Christian home already is quite a miracle. So as a child, I had a pretty strong sense of my sense of faith and my belief system for a little person. And my dad really likes to tell this story that when we went back and visited my Chinese family in Hong Kong, I was probably about 3 or 4, I think, because I have a very vague memory of it myself. But it's a story that my dad tells, and it's one where he would take me down into the markets every day, and we would get different little things. But on this particular day, I specifically said to him, I want a bouncy ball. And they were in those, those big vending machine things with the coin, and then you turn it. And I said, not only do I want a bouncy ball, I want a blue one. And in the machine, he could see that there was two blue ones. And he says, okay, well, let's see what happens. So we put the thing in, and we turn it, and out comes this green ball. So not only was it not blue, but it was also, how the bouncy balls are made from two halves and they stick them together? It was wonky. And so he goes, Oh, well, and I should preface it too with that, like, he says, okay, you want a blue one? Well, let's pray. So let's ask God, see if he gives you a blue one. So he'd prayed, and out comes this green, wonky one. And he thinks, okay, well, that wasn't really an answer to prayer. So maybe the way that she's going to get this answer is I'll take it into the shop. And of course, if you see a little 4-year-old, she wants a bouncy ball, they'll probably just let her, pick one out that she wants. So he goes in and asks them, no. Like, hard no. Not even going to consider it. So then my dad, he's got his own testimony, his own challenges. He throws the ball in anger, goes, well, screw you guys. Fine, I'm going to take my poor little kid and we're going to leave. So he throws me up on his shoulders and he's walking away. And then you hear this little, right? Now I don't have any ball. So then he stops. Oh, guilt trip, right? Oh, any parent knows. You just want to make your kids happy, right? Oh, and so then he hears the crying. Okay, fine. All right, I probably shouldn't have got so angry. Let's just try again. So let's pray one more time. God, please, can I have a blue bouncy ball? So we go back and turn the thing. And what do you know? Out of the 2 that he could see, 1 pops out, perfectly round, blue little bouncy ball. And so then, as a little person, your faith grows, right? It starts to take on its own little rolling ball, really. So from there, I was homeschooled, which maybe some people don't know about me. I did go to kindy for the first year of my life, a little Christian school down in Tasmania. But then I was homeschooled from year 1 to 12. I think my parents, they just felt that their conviction was they wanted to raise strong Christian children. And so for them, that was homeschooling. So I did that through a curriculum called ACE, or ACE, which is a very American, I should say, very American, like Baptist, strong foundational curriculum. And so part of my everyday life was memorizing entire books of the Bible. Do not ask me now because it's kind of all fallen out. But I can still, to this day, tell you, oh yeah, that's in that book, or yeah, that's from that book. Couldn't tell you the verse, but it's in there, which is pretty cool. I think that's an amazing legacy that my parents have given me, that, we memorised entire books word for word, which is, a bit fun about me. And then a big part of my life growing up was dancing. So I did ballet, jazz, tap, contemporary, all of them, auditioned for different things, did competitions. It was amazing to be part of my life. I had 7 girls that I grew up with, all from different schools across the Northern Beaches, none of them who were Christian, but we all just got along really well, and they were beautiful, beautiful girls, and even now we're all still pretty close friends, which is pretty cool. So then after school finished, year 12, because dance was such a big part of my life, I knew that I wanted to continue doing that. And so I went straight from year 12 into C3 Creative Arts College, which is in Oxford Falls, and did my full-time dance as well as getting a Bible college qualification, sort of in leadership and Christian ministry. And part of the kind of the rule is in Bible college, do not start any new relationships in your first year of college. They want you to focus and be there because you're there to better yourself as a Christian and to understand God and what his plan is for your life. So it was interesting because I probably got to the end of term 4 and Adam came into my life. And that is a story in and itself. You'll have to ask him someday about how he was very stealthy in getting my phone number, perhaps without my consent. But hey, things all worked out great. Hey, 20 years later. So yes, we were married in 2005, so I was only 20. I was pretty young. At the time, felt like I was super grown up. What is everyone so worried about? Now when I look at 20-year-olds, I'm like, oh my word, you are little. So I'm sure when I'm much older, I'll even look back on myself at 40 and think, oh my goodness, you are so little. But, it's all part of life and part of growing up. And it's really nice that I get to say that I spent my 20s and 30s with my husband and hopefully the rest of my life. So it's good. So the last 20 years, kind of from Bible college onwards in my married life and my family life, have been a mix of, as is everyone's, ordinary days, exciting days, challenging days, really boring days. But a few kind of highlights, I suppose you would say, is I ran my own dance school for a very long time in Sydney before we moved here. It was a tap and hip hop school. That was my forte, my two favourite loves. And I loved it. When Honor was born, she spent most of her first year, actually the first 2 years of her life, coming in and out of the dance studio, dancing along with the kids. I think the last concert I had, I was 36 weeks pregnant with Justice, and Honor's on stage dancing. I'm bawling my eyes out because I knew it was the last one and I was heavily pregnant. But she's there like dancing around this tiny little thing. And so that was a really big part of my life, was dance and my dance school. We moved here, and that was when I just started teaching for other people instead, which was God's plan for me, because then I had 2 little kids at home. It's much harder to run your own business when you have 2 little kids. But I really look back on that time with a lot of love and affection, my dance school. I also co-led a dance ministry out of Pittwater Uniting Church, which is where Adam and I spent a lot of our life in our early 20s. And that was a lot of fun too, with a lot of beautiful young women who were in the dance field but wanted to use it to glorify God. And so we did a lot of dance. We did like items, as well as at the time, I don't know if many of you are kind of in the Pentecostal time around that time of our history, but there was like, you would have praise and worship, but then you'd also have dancers who would be kind of petitioning in the spirit, I suppose you would say, where it wasn't like banners or flags or anything like that. It was very much modern dance, but it would be coming from a place of worship and praise on behalf of the congregation. So that was a really fun time in my life too, and being able to lead those young girls, some of who were only like 15, 16, who were all very much into dance schools and competitions as well in that area of their life, but were able to bring it into church, which was a lot of fun, and I really, really loved that. From Pittwater, Adam and I moved on to plant an Acts 29 church in the city called Whitehorse, and that was a huge part of our lives for a very long time as well. I was a new mum, going in and out of the city, meeting in pubs, helping kind of plant that with some really good friends of ours. And the only reason we left there was when we moved to the Highlands. So in 2013, Adam joined the police force, and we moved to Moss Vale with a 2-year-old and an 8-month-old. But I continued to teach dance, like I said, around the area, and it's only in the last sort of 4 or 5 years that I've moved on into my new career of being a librarian. So on that note, I want to like throw back to 1985 when my parents were trying to decide, well, what do we name this beautiful baby girl? And being Christians, they believe very heavily that names are like prophetic and have like a hold in the spirit, and so they specifically wanted my name, and later on my little brother, who came 2 years later, they wanted it to be very specific in that on paper they wanted someone to see the name and go, oh, that's someone who comes from a mixed background. So that is why my first name is a Chinese name, and Shu Sin, which is my full first name, Shu Sin. People just call me Shu because it's easier. Shu Sin translates directly to Shu in Chinese is book or record of faith, like a written. And then Sin is faith. So it's like book of faith or a written record of faith. And so for them, they wanted to instill that over my life straight away, that it's like written on this child is a record of faith, that we are proclaiming that over her. And so then my middle name is Faith, so it's Shu Sin Faith, and my maiden name was Stevenson with a V. Stevenson with a V. So I used to be able to just spell out on the phone, yes, it's Shu Sin, Shuxin, and then I'd be able to say Stevenson with a V. Now, when I got married, I was like, oh, great. I have to spell out the whole thing, because then when you now say it's Shu Behr, they go, oh, bear, like Bear? No. No, Behr. And I get some very, very interesting iterations of my name, but that's okay. It's all part of it. But yeah, so my full name was Shu Faith Stevenson, which, yeah, very clearly on paper shows that this person comes from a mixed background, which I always really loved. I was not one of those kids that was like, oh, hate my weird, unique name. I've always loved it. My brother's name is Shu Yi. So Shu, again, is that book or record, and Yi means righteousness. So his name is Shu Yi Joshua, because he was a man of righteousness in the Bible, Stevenson. But it has over time been shortened to Chewie. He loved Star Wars as a young guy, loved Chewbacca in particular. So he was Chewbacca for a while, and then Chewie kind of just turned into Chewie, to the point now that even his mail comes addressed to Chewie Stevenson, which is quite funny. Not quite sure how my mum feels about it, but hey, she always used to joke that she's got her pair of shoes, which was a bit cute. Yeah. So my name, I feel like, has been a really strong anchor through my life. Having that faith spoken over me from birth has kind of almost been like an anchor and a rope that has been able to hold me firm throughout my life. So from that like bouncy ball moment, that kind of very small childlike faith that has then brought me into my teens, where I did have to, I went through some things, and having to watch my parents' marriage kind of implode and then explode was tough. It's hard as a young person, and especially as someone who had Christian parents, it was difficult to kind of comprehend like, oh, they're still sinners, right? That's a hard concept to come to terms with when you're a kid, that it's like, oh, my parents are not perfect. Things can go wrong, and they did. So it was hard for me as a teenager to go, okay, that's what I'm seeing. What is real? But my mum was a very strong example in my life. She was able to continue to turn to God, and that was a huge part of how I've learned to respond to hard circumstances. But from that sort of faith to my teens, into Bible college, into a young marriage, and then my adult life, where I have had to face some health stuff. I was diagnosed with Graves' disease when I was about 25, just before I had honour. And I'd had a year of horrendous, the doctors just saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, go home and do some deep breathing, without ever really checking that actually my thyroid was on like overdrive. So I was pretty unwell. And then over the course of the next 10 years, tried to keep it in remission, just kept coming back. And I had to kind of come to terms with extreme anxiety as one of the symptoms. That's one of the things. And then just ongoing, it's just, even now that I've had it taken away, I had radioactive iodine back in 2019, which meant that it's dead now, because it kind of thyroid takes up iodine. So if you put in poisonous iodine, well, it's going to die. So I don't have a thyroid anymore, but it doesn't mean that I'm cured. It's one of those things where they've just gone, oh, well, we can't fix it, so let's just get rid of it. So it's an ongoing thing that I live with. But having gone through that over a 10-year period, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I've accepted it. I've been able to work through some things. And knowing that my name means faith, I was like, all right, I'm going to get this tattoo. So I got faith tattooed on my wrist. It's the one and only tattoo I have, but it symbolizes that time in my life where I really had to work through, what does this actually mean for me? What is my faith? Why hasn't God healed me? It's not like Adam and I didn't try. We fasted, we prayed, we begged him to just fix it because it was horrendous. It's like, why? Why did God not answer that? Does he not care about me? Am I not praying enough? Am I not good enough? What's the deal? Have I only believed in God because my parents believed in God? Maybe I don't believe in God. And so all of that kind of stuff, it's like, Why do I have to endure this, especially at a time when I had 2 really little kids and I just moved away from my mum? There were so many mornings that I'd wake up and I'd just be so like panic ridden. And again, it was just because of like my thyroid was just way out, so it messes with your hormones. So I'd be ringing my mum in tears, and she's 2 hours away. So she's like, "What can I do?" But she would just pray with me on the phone. I'd be on my knees in my bedroom praying, "Please just get me through today. I have 2 little kids that are just depending on me. My husband's on a 13-hour shift as a police officer. I have to get up. Like, my kids are so little." And so having to work through that has been probably the biggest challenge of my adult life up to this point. But I feel like that faith, and this was my like physical reminder. I could look at it and be like, no, you just like have faith that God has seen you through it before. But it's interesting because then when I look back, which is wonderful, when you get to a point in your life where you're old enough to be able to look back, it's kind of cool. I've seen that thread of faith, but when I thought about it more, I was like, actually, there's kind of like a plot twist there, because it's not my faith. It's actually God's faithfulness to me. It's not that I was like clawing, like holding on, clawing my way up the faith wall. It's actually God from the very beginning, from that moment my parents spoke that over me, has said, yeah, she's mine. I've got it. Like, I'll be faithful. And so I just love that I can look back and I can see time and time again where he's made the path like so clear. When I started my dance school, it was like, it just happened. I didn't even go looking for it. It wasn't even like I'd planned for 2 years. Oh, yep, this is what I'm going to do. No, it was literally within a 2-week period. It was like, now you're going to start dance school. And then even Adam joining the police force, it just all fell into place. Buying our first home, it all just fell into place. Like even the fact, the home that we live in is the one we bought, and when we moved to Moss Vale, we rented a little place on the same street we live on, around the corner, number 3, and it was stunning. Like you could look out the cows, the paddocks, all of that kind of thing, which is ridiculous because when Adam and I were dating, he brought me down here because his mum lives in Bargo, Debbie lives in Bargo, and he brought me down to meet her, and she took us for a drive because I'm a city girl, right? Grew up on the Northern Beaches for the most part. That's where I lived the most. He took me down here. She took us for a drive. I've thrown myself under the bus telling this story. You're all going to look at me like, really? Sure. We're driving along, and I'm looking out the window. This is 19-year-old me. And I go to Adam, what is that on the hill? And he goes, "Show you, those are cows." And I go, "What? No, they're not. They're not black and white." And he goes, "Oh my gosh." And I'm sure poor Debbie probably like was sitting there going, "Who is this stupid girl that my son has brought to meet me?" And so the fact that the first home that we rented looked out on a paddock with all these beautiful cows, and the cows would literally be like this close from us. And I have a video of me filming Justice on a bed when he's in his little sleep suits. And I'm going, "Justice, where are the cows?" And he looks out the window and he's like, "Moo." So it's very cute. And so when we wanted to buy a place, I said to Adam, "Oh my goodness, where are we going to find a place that's like this, looking out on the cows, that's in our price range?" I said, "There are none." And so we actually were looking to buy a townhouse in Moss Vale. We were almost about to sign on the dotted line, and it kind of all fell through. And at the time, it was like, oh, I really wanted that place. Like, that was great. Literally the next morning, the house that we bought came up for sale. 3 doors down from the house that we rented. We see the cows. We put our fridge and our washing machine on a trolley and just walked down the street. It was amazing. And so even little stories like that, I can clearly see God's hand has like been all over it. So I feel like my testimony, not only is it a testimony of God's faithfulness, it's also not just to me, it's to my parents. It's his story of faithfulness to them, because even though, their marriage didn't work out and they've got their own stories in that, they still chose to raise us as a Christian home. They still chose to pray over us. They still instilled all of those foundational principles in us. And I think that that's just such a beautiful story of God's faithfulness through generations. And I feel like too that it's so important that we continue to share that with each other. You know, when you look at Genesis 11, where you read, I think you say Terah, his genealogy, which was the account of like Abraham, the patriarch of the Israelite people. You know, you have Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac was the father of Jacob, and then Jacob, who was renamed Israel, he was the father of the 12 sons, who then became the tribes of Israel, right? So the Israelites would have like recognized God's faithfulness through the history that Moses wrote in like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. When he wrote that, those 5 books of their history while they were wandering in circles in the desert, and they would have seen that and known that it was a testimony to God's faithfulness to them, the Israelites. But they had forgotten to continue to teach it to their children, and that's why they'd ended up where they'd ended up, because they'd turned their backs on God and forgotten what he had done, basically. And so I feel like it's so important that not only did my parents, for their generation, speak into mine, then I'm hopefully, fingers crossed, speaking into my children, that I want that to be their story too, that they can look back and say, yep, that was our history, that's our family, look what God has done for us. I just think that's just incredible. And so then that brings me to Psalm 77, verse 11 to 12, which I love, because I feel like in our society, and as someone who has struggled with anxiety, I've done the therapy, I've done the psychologists, I've done the counselors, I've done all those things, right? And one of the biggest things that cognitive behavior therapy does, CBT, is gratitude journals, right? That's a big thing in our society. It's like, yeah, just practice your gratitude. Write down one thing or up to 5 things a day that you've noticed that have brought you joy or whatever it is. And I love that because it's actually a really biblical principle for us to notice and recognize the good things in our life and actually give the credit to God. And so Psalm 77, 11 to 12 says, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. And I also really love the Message, which kind of flips it around a little bit, which says, once again, I'll go over what God has done. I will lay it out on the table, those ancient wonders, and I'll ponder all the things you've accomplished and give a long, loving look at your acts. You know, and it just ties right into that gratitude thing. It's like, yes, I'm going to take a look at the end of the day. What has God done for me today? And sometimes all it is had a really good cup of coffee. You know, we live in Australia where we have amazing coffee. And sometimes it's just, I've had a really good cup of coffee. Or, you know what? I saw a really cute puppy today. Well, I have 2 at home. But, you know, it's those little things where it's like, actually, that was a really beautiful sunset or whatever it was. Sometimes it's not that, oh my gosh, God's done this amazing, big, huge change, miracle in my life today. It's actually just those moments in your life where you choose to look and give credit, not to the universe, not to, oh yeah, that was just a good day. No, it's God. That's his faithfulness. The fact that you're here every day and you can choose to see those things, that's his faithfulness to you. So I love that verse, and I love that that's something that we can hold on to, that you need to remember what God has done. Don't forget, because I can guarantee you, even if you didn't have a childhood like mine, even if you didn't get to grow up in a Christian home, I can guarantee that every person sitting in here would still have things that they can look back on and say, actually, that was God working in my life. That's brought me to where I am now, and even to this point where you're sitting here today. So can guarantee it, because God is like ridiculously faithful, and he is constant. He doesn't change. And so we can fully rely on the fact that he comes through with his promises. He doesn't let us wither and die. He's there. So coming to the end of that, I just want to encourage you to use that verse. Remember what God has done. Continue to look at what he's doing, and continue to ask as well. Say, God, show me your faithfulness. Help me to be faithful to you in return. I feel like that's the thing. You can't just take it and then be good with that. No, you've got to share it with each other. It's moments like this where I get to share with you just a little glimpse and a little snippet into my life, but use that. I think that's the most important part, and encouraging each other is what builds your faith. I think having written all of this down, God was showing me, he said, look, your story was not a 180. There was no life and death moment. There was no time where it was like a before or an after for me. For me, it's like, well, I've just always been a Christian. And so like I said at the beginning, I've always struggled with that a little bit, that, testimony, like I don't have anything amazing. There was nothing that has terribly happened in my life that turned me to God. Like I said, there's no for me, there's no before or after. And so God kind of said to me, but that's not your story. And I've had this huge thing that I've held on to, that yes, that thread that started when I was born, he's knitted it and knitted it and knitted it, and each time that there's been faithfulness on his behalf and then a reciprocation from my behalf and my growing in my faith and my love of Christ, it's become like a scarf almost that I can wrap around myself as comfort in his faithfulness. And I believe that for everyone, that our faith starts off small, but then each thing helps it to grow, and it becomes this thing that we can wrap around us. And I love the idea that by the time we get to heaven, hopefully it'll be like a blanket, right? Doubled around, sit all cozy in my faith blanket. And so I really love that God has shown that to me through being able to think about what is my testimony. And it is just that God is faithful and he will grow your faith if you allow it. Yeah, amen. Thank you. So I think I'd like to end on the thought of, if you feel like your faith is just like a tiny little string and you're just barely hanging on, I would love to pray over us at the end here. I would also love to encourage anyone who feels like, actually, I have no faith. I don't even really believe that there's a God, or maybe I thought there was, but I haven't seen him in my life. That's also, I would love to be able to pray over us as a whole for that as well. And then if you feel like you would like to come forward and have a chat, that would be amazing. I would love to do that with anybody. But I also just want to pray over us all that we would allow his faithfulness to show and to be able to share it with others. So let's all bow our heads. I'll pray over us. Oh Lord, you are so faithful and just and full of grace, to the point that we don't even know how far your grace reaches, how far that net is thrown for when you pull us into you. So thank you, Lord, that you are a constant and reliable God. I thank you that we never have to double, think about it. That will God remember me? Will God pull through for me? Absolutely. Maybe not in a way that we think, but you are always there. So Lord, I just want to pray over anyone right now who is feeling like their faith is close to snapping. Lord, I just want to pray your strength over them. I just see the yarn along that knitting analogy, Lord. I just see it spinning and tying and knotting and strengthening, Lord. And I just pray that over anyone in this room or even online who's listening, that they will feel that strengthening in their spirit. That I pray that their hearts will be open, that they'll take that and they will look and see how good your love and faithfulness is for them. And Lord, I pray over anyone here who feels that they've never even started that little thread. I pray, Lord, that you'll help them to take that first step, that their hearts will be open to beginning that first little stitch with you. And God, I thank you that you promise to finish the work that you have started. And so I thank you that whatever has begun and whatever is continuing, we know that you will never stop until we are with you in heaven and seeing you face to face, Lord, wrapped up in that big faith blanket. Lord, it will be a wonderful day where we can look at you and say, thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for seeing us through everything that we have gone through in our earthly lives. So, Lord, I just pray over everyone this week as they go about their days. Let them see those little glimmers of faithfulness. Lord, open our eyes, remove those scales from our eyes that we can clearly and with clarity be able to see where you are working and give you the credit for your goodness and for your faithfulness. So we just pray over all of these things. In Jesus' name, amen. So I would like to release anyone who would like to go downstairs. Hub is open, coffee is flowing. But yes, if anyone would like to come forward, the altar is open for whatever prayer you're feeling you would like. We'll be up here for a little while. So thanks, guys.